Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob, he's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Season 2 officially. Joe, welcome to 2025, the official second season of the Reds Rundown. I'll kind of dive a little bit more into what that means here in a second, but Joe, as always, how you doing, man? How are things?
Doing great. College football season's wrapping up. One more game of that. We got NFL playoffs. Sad that our Cincinnati Bengals couldn't make it in the end. We talked about a little bit of that at the end of the Reds season, but that gives us a little bit more hope for the Reds this season. You know, the Cincinnati fans will always kind of go from one season to the next, hoping for greatness and always falling short seemingly, but we're hoping for better this year.
Yeah, we can only hope, right? I think the expectations for the Reds will be a little different. We will dive into that later on in this season. I wanted to let you guys know that we're going to be coming back to weekly uploads, but it won't be until the season. That will be consistently on Mondays. We're going to try to shoot for Mondays, but we'll have to see what happens. Like, this one is going to be recorded and put out on a Tuesday just due to a few other work-related things that are going on. So, and I think like holidays, there are a lot of holidays coming up on Mondays too, Joe. So we will be recording these and trying to get them out to you on Mondays once the season starts more officially. But for right now, we still wanted to get back into the groove and start talking to you guys. And today, we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to be going over some of the moves that have been made here in the last month, Joe. Specifically, I think there are a few pretty good moves in terms of size for the Reds, at least, that were made. We also have arbitration was figured out and finalized here since over the last month as well. The Reds have a new broadcasting deal, which I think is a big surprise to pretty much everybody in the season. And then we will go over our off-season grades, which will lead us into the question of the day. Let us know in the comment section below. Let us know on Twitter as well. What grade are you giving the Reds off-season so far? Make sure that you guys let us know about that before you get to the point where you get to hear about it from us. We don't want to influence you in that way. Just let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll make sure to respond in kind. But, Joe, let's hop into all the craziness. The Reds have done some stuff. They started off, and I'm going to go with more of the minor deals for right now. They started off, they went and signed Brian Shaw. A little bit of an older guy, but somebody who Cleveland fans will remember. He had two different stints with them. Had multiple seasons of pitching in some of the most games, including one season where he pitched exactly in half of the games for the Cleveland then Indians, now Guardians, under Terry Francona, somebody who has not seen much action, was with the White Sox and couldn't do much last year, but the Reds went out and decided to get him. I know he's not a barn burner, but is somebody who they felt like maybe it's more of a comfort thing. Terry trusting somebody who maybe can give him one little bit more. I always think of David Justice in Moneyball, when Brad Pitt goes to ask him, Billy Beane, I just want to squeeze that last bit of baseball juice out of you. I have a feeling that maybe that's what this is looking like, although it is a minor league deal, so we'll have to see. Another one that was really interesting is the Reds went out and traded for Owen White, which was a bit of a surprise, something that many people, I think many fans are going to consider to be kind of an under the radar. They did it for cash, but this guy was once a top prospect, has moved to the bullpen and shown some proclivity to, maybe adapting to it pretty well between, different surgeries and control problems. He's a project guy, but one that, again, at one point was a top prospect in baseball, and I think the Reds are taking a chance on him. The Reds also went out and traded for Jose Trevino, the newest, Reds backup catcher. They seem to have a good legacy of backup catchers, as we talked about, Joe. They traded Fernando Cruz and Alex Jackson. Alex Jackson couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a baseball bat, but is a good defensive catcher. And Fernando Cruz was 35, and I think we squeezed the most that we could have out of him, sent him to the Yankees. And then I think the biggest deal, the biggest deal for sure, and one that I think surprised a lot of people, the Reds traded for Gavin Lux, of the Dodgers, well, previously of the Dodgers, after they went and signed a Korean middle infielder. It kind of pushed him out. And the Reds traded Mike Sirota and their in the 37th pick in the draft this year. The Reds leveraging, not trading too much prospect-wise and going for a pick instead. Joe, break down in the two parts. Take a look at the relief pitchers real quickly here, and then let's go to the major league guys. What are your thoughts on these moves?
Yeah, the relief pitchers don't necessarily care about all that much. I think, as you said, Owen White's a project, and Brian Shaw, I don't know if he's going to be on the roster this year at all, so we'll see if he makes it out of camp. If either of them pitches one inning for the Reds this year, I would count that as a win. And then if they give up a lot of runs, don't yell at me. That's just, you got something out of them. But the other guys are the more interesting part. Jose Trevino, 73 games played last year for the Yankees. He had a 0.6 WAR, so he only had a 215 batting average, and we talked a lot about how last year we struggled to hit for average a lot, and this doesn't really fix that problem. But when you don't play every day, it is very much hard to get into a groove, into a rhythm. He is a guy who I think is a good backup catcher, one of the best we've had for several years, to be honest. Maybe Kirk Casale the first time around. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, Rob, when this actually happened, but maybe Kirk Casale the first time around, maybe even before that. So very good at framing pitches. I think he'll be a solid defensive catcher for us as well. That is something they're obviously looking for in a backup catcher. If Stevenson goes down, you want someone who can manage the staff, as Stevenson showed his strides last year. But a very good backup catcher. I really did like this move for the Reds. And then Gavin Lux. I like the move because we didn't give up much of anything to get Gavin Lux, to be honest. I don't know. I guess when you're taking this into account, we gave up Jonathan India to get Brady Singer, which we talked about in our last podcast episode, and we got Gavin Lux too, which is a net win. You got value there. But for a team that struggled to hit, we gave up India, and then you got Lux, and I'm not sure how much of an improvement it is. Now, a guy who hit 251 last year, he has 2 World Series under his belt, but he missed 2023, so last year was maybe a kind of getting back to normal year for him, and he had played 139 games. For him, it's going to be, can he build off of that to prove he's more valuable than Jonathan India? I think he can still do that. I kind of like the trade. It's not something I scratch my head a little bit of like, hey, this guy is going to be a good bat. He wasn't exactly the bat we thought we were going to get, but I do like the trade.
Yeah, no. So I'll kind of piggyback off on what you're saying here. I'm intrigued by Owen White just as a pitching guy. His stuff is really interesting. And he's still only 25, and there are plenty of relievers. I mean, we saw Fernando Cruz be useful for like a year and a half at age 33 and 34. I think he's a guy who they're buying low on. He's got an option as well, so they're not going to have to really worry about that. And I think they're just going to try to develop him. And I think we've shown in the past with Derek Johnson that he's pretty good at kind of helping people find command. Right? Sometimes. It depends on the type of pitcher that we're talking about here. But I think he might be able to really help this kid, and I think that's what they are anticipating when we are taking a look at Owen White. Brian Shaw, again, I think it's just they're going to give him a shot. I don't even know if he's going to end up sticking around in AAA, to be honest with you. It wasn't great, but hey, you know what? If they figure something out for him and they can solve whatever issues that he's had and he can be good. I mean, there are plenty of pitchers that can be good after 37. There's no doubt about it, but I don't know if Brian Shaw is going to be one of them. With Trevino, this is a big signifier to me, Joe, that they are uber focused on pitching this year, right? They have 2, I think, pretty solid catchers. I know that Stevenson doesn't always grade out really well in terms of defense. Like, he has some good parts, some bad. He can be a little stiff back there at times, I think, a little too rigid, but I think Trevino is being brought in to not only help Stevenson take the next step forward, because I did hear rumors that even though they finished arbitration with him, that they are working on a long-term deal for Tyler Stevenson to lock him up for a little while. I think I saw the top 10 catcher ratings that recently came out by MLB Network. If he's not in the top 10, which I guess can be fine, he should be right outside of it. He's at least one of the better offensive catchers in baseball in my mind right now, especially if he's healthy. So I'm cool with this move. The fact that I think you and I talked about this, Joe, the fact that Trevino could bring even 0.6 WAR in 73 games as a backup catcher, it just shows, and batting 215 just shows kind of how good he can be. He's a former All-Star. He can bat in the 240s, 250s. It's just, he would probably need a little bit more time. He doesn't have a ton of pop, but I don't know. I feel like this is a really, like you said, I think this might have been like the best backup catcher we probably could have gotten other than maybe Brian McCann. And even that is I don't know. I would say Trevino might be better for me right now based on where we're at, but we'll have to see with that one. But Gavin Lux interests me a lot more than maybe I think a lot of other people. Joe, this kid is really good. Providing a 2+ WAR in his last 2 seasons of being healthy. He didn't even play 150 games. And not just that, but he doesn't really strike out a whole lot. I think that he can play everywhere other than pitcher and catcher. I think that adds a lot of versatility. I think they will find a way to get him in the lineup on a daily basis. He is, again, a contact guy. He's not going to hit a ton of home runs necessarily. He'll probably hit more than he has. Like, there's a real world where he has 15 home runs this year. He had 10 last season. I think he can probably eclipse that number being in GABP. I think that can absolutely help. And like you said, I think people have to consider the fact that, like, basically the Reds traded Jonathan India for Singer and Lux is essentially how this came down to, right? Jonathan India and Mike Sirota and that 37th pick. I've heard that this isn't necessarily a super strong class in terms of what you would normally pick there at the 37. I like that the Reds are leveraging, not giving up their first round pick, but giving up, the 37th pick, which, yeah, that sometimes can turn into a good baseball player, but that 37th pick isn't going to turn into anything for 3 or 4 years. So the value there to me, I think, is negligible at this time. We'll have to see. I know a lot of Reds fans, including myself, will be watching to see who ends up getting picked there ultimately, because the Dodgers are pretty good at drafting overall, but I really like what we're going to see out of him. He's a gamer. He does a lot of things. A stat that was pointed out to me, I believe it was on Reddit, was he has a lot of weighted runs created. Like, he creates a lot of runs, like some of the most in baseball. Maybe it was on Twitter, for the amount of at-bats that he gets. And I think that can be really, really good for this team. He's not slow. He doesn't have a ton of stolen bases, but he's not slow. He's just not like Ellie De La Cruz fast, right? I would describe him maybe more as like quick than fast, if that makes sense. And I'm really excited to see what he can do. I mean, he's a better defensive player than Jonathan India is. And I think that they may be targeting him as an everyday guy at the top of the lineup, to be honest with you, Joe. I think he's going to be setting up Ellie De La Cruz quite a bit. Get a guy on base, get a guy who can move people over if we need to. I don't know. I could see him being at the top of the lineup. I could also see him being at the very bottom. Obviously, he's not going to make it in the middle, but I could see him batting 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, somewhere around there, and providing a ton of value. And he already came in and said, like, hey, we expect to win. Like, that's what I'm coming in here for. Or not coming here for. He got traded, but that's what he's expecting. He's going to bring that mentality. He's going to know how to do it as well. And, like, these are the kind of subtle moves that I think can really make a baseball team a lot better than people think as well. You got him for this year and next year, before arbitration is over, I believe, when I was looking at his contract. And I feel like this is a guy that Terry Francona is going to love and get a lot out of. And I think he's going to quickly become a Reds fan favorite. I don't know why, but he's a gamer, man. And I'm really intrigued to see what he can be for this team.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think a very good deal. And he's a good player, and probably a little bit better than Jonathan India in both offense and defense, to be honest. The thing that I think was surprising to me was, I think I said this maybe last episode or 2 episodes ago, Rob, is like, we're going to get a bat. We just don't, like, if they fail to get one of these outfielders that can hit left-handed pitching, they're just going to throw a bat in there. It may be a left-handed hit or maybe a position we don't expect, and it was a position we did. We got another infielder, but as you said, they're going to put him in the outfield. I think is where he's going to be. He's going to make his money on the outfield for us this year. He's going to, spot starts in the infield for sure. But a left-handed hitter, we didn't really need one of those. An infielder, we really didn't need one of those. And this might be a team that crushes right-handed pitching, and then we play a left-hander and we look lost because we really haven't done a lot to address that. And he is very bad against left-handers, and he will platoon if there's a left-hander out there. I don't think you can put him in the lineup. I think he batted like 150 last year against left-handers. So this is a good addition. Your team is better because of adding him, and we didn't give up much. So again, I love the move. I don't know what that means net wins wise for next year because you didn't fix a lot of the issues. Yes, it's good to have a guy who can hit for average. Yes, it's good to have another good player, but they still need to go out and get that right-handed bat. They still need to go out and get that guy who can hit left-handed pitching. But I like the move. I think it's for what they got. It's an A+ for value. Like this guy is going to be very good for us, and I really do think what you said about Terry Francona. We'll love him, but that was kind of the odd part of it. Is like you gave up India, and that's fine. And I think when you take the whole total in and out for the offseason, the Reds, that's pretty good. But now it's kind of like, where do we go from here? Do we make another move? Because I feel like you kind of still have to, even by adding Lux. Like I think a lot of times the Reds front office might think, oh, we got another player, we might be done. If this is what the finished product for the Reds roster is, then that is not good enough. And we'll talk about like offseason grades here in a little bit. But like, it was still a very good trade. That needs to be recognized for what it is. Because yes, we'll have a lot of left-handed hitters. We'll have to figure out the lineup every day of who's playing where. This guy is very good, so I do like the trade.
Yeah, and I will say he was very valued. There were a lot of big teams that were looking at Gavin Lux, and I had originally heard he was going to the Yankees, just to give you guys an example. So I don't think he fixes the problem either, but I will say, and people are going to hate me for this, and we'll dive into it a little more when we do our offseason grades. Oh, man, I can't wait to get ripped apart for this one. This might be short-worthy here, Joe, but I'm almost certain that the Reds are just depending on Matt McLain to be that right-handed bat. I'm almost, at this point, I'm almost 100% sure that the additional right-handed bat that the Reds are going to get this year is going to be Matt McLain, and they are already hyping him up. I've been listening to, like, Hot Stove Report, all that kind of stuff from the Reds, or Reds Hot Stove or whatever, and they talked with McLain, and I mean, they are hyping him up. I know he's going to be good, but, like, I worry. I really worry that he's going to find a way to pull a hammy or something again, and it's just going to be an issue. But we'll see. I mean, look, if he can be, if he can be the T. Higgins to Ellie De La Cruz's, Jamar Chase, right? Like, then that's great. Like, even if he's a guy who's often injured, but if he can put out 135, 140 games a year, right, and be that second guy for this team, then great. But, like, you just can't – I just can't go into a season thinking that our right field is going to be platooned by Jake Fraley and Will Benson again. I just really don't know how I can reconcile myself. And I know that they're expecting Spencer Steer to make strides. And I think he will. I really do. I think he will find more consistency. We saw him kind of go through his sophomore slump. He had moments. He had weeks. He might be a right-handed Jay Bruce for all we know, where he is super high for like 2 weeks and then terrible for 2 months, right? But like during those highs, he can carry the entire team. We'll have to see. But I think Gavin Lux brings consistency, and I'm really excited to see what his bat and his mentality is going to help with this team in a major way. So very excited for that. But we'll move on, Joe. Arbitration for the Reds. I'm going to read these off real quickly. Alexis Diaz, they settled at $4.5 million. Brady Singer, $8.75 million. Nick Lodolo, $1.975 million. If he is healthy, that is one of the biggest steals in baseball. Gavin Lux, $3.3 million. Jose Trevino, $3.4. Funny that he is getting paid more than Lux, actually. Jake Fraley, $3.1. Sam Mole, $1 million. Another huge steal. No idea how that guy did not get more than $1 million this year. I'll be totally honest with you. And then Tyler Stevenson at $4.9 million. The Reds kind of went under a lot of estimates for pretty much all of these guys, Joe. I want to point out a couple of these. I think if Alexis Diaz can refine himself, he'll be one of the best, cheapest closers in baseball. Singer, I'm fine with that. I think they expect him to be a 2 or 3 type starter. $8 million is fine with me. Ladola, dude, if this man can stay healthy and kind of show the flashes that he's seen at less than $2 million a year, that is That is quite a steal. Lux and Trevino, again, I already said what was interesting about that. I think Fraley's the most overpaid one here, but again, he's a bat to ball guy, so maybe they just, I don't know, maybe we'll figure out what they're going to do with that. Getting Mole at 1 million is a steal as well. And even Tyler Stevenson at less than 5 million is a steal to me. I really like all these arbitration figures. I'll give you guys as well real quickly the Reds' current payroll allocations after all of that comes out to be right around 90 million this year, which is about 10 million less than what they had allocated last year. Even though Nick Martinez will now, Joe, be 2 years running as the most valuable player for the Reds in terms of monetary value. So very interesting with that one. But any quick thoughts on arbitration?
We got a bunch of steals, to be honest. I mean, that's how arbitration works, so nothing surprising here. All those players coming back is good. It's what we're going to need to do the next couple of years is to keep on getting good deals through arbitration to keep this roster together because the Reds are the Reds and will not be able to afford paying a lot of guys that we'll get to here in a second with some of the money they're going to have. But this was a crucial aspect. All these guys getting in for lesser than probably what they're worth, I think, is very good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of payroll, the Reds, we all thought they were going to MLB. They're not. FanDuel Sports Network, also formerly known as Bally Sports, has reached a new deal with the Reds just in time, Joe. Just in the last 24 hours or so since recording this. Big surprise. According? I don't know. According to reports, $60 million million dollars average annually, Joe, in extra payroll. Now, or not payroll, but just in terms of the deal. I am intrigued. They said, I'm reading a quote here. I don't remember where this is from, but I'm reading it on MLB Trade Rumors. The deal with FanDuel does enhance our economics slightly. It's our goal to continue to give Nick Krall and his staff every available resource that the franchise has in 2025. Then it's up to Nick on how best to spend that, said the COO, which is one of the Castellinis, I believe. Pretty sure. Does this change anything for you, Joe? I mean, this is more money than they expected, right? Because they didn't think they were going to get this money. Now they are for this year. I feel, personally, like this should allow them to go out and spend money. There are still available free agents for them to get, even on one-year deals, that wouldn't break the bank for them. If they spend $20 million just this year on a one-year deal with a player, they will only be $10 million over what they were last year. They have the money to do it now. Does this change more than slightly for you? And even if that slightly was maybe like that extra $5 million that they needed, I would love to hear your thoughts because I'm really intrigued on what this could end up meaning for them.
Yeah, I don't think it changes much. There's a Cincinnati.com story that came out and said basically what's coming down to is they're getting 10 extra million this year off of this deal, which, that's not nothing for a small market team, but it's not enough to go sign a major free agent. So, and then they asked Nick Krall, what more flexibility? Are you going to add more players? Kind of that type of questioning. And it was very much we'll have to see what we have. We'll have to see what our resources are. And so it just kind of feels like it's same old Reds. It's nice to have extra money, but it doesn't seem like they're actually going to use it. Should they use it, and should they find even low-cost free agents to kind of support this team? Yes. But I don't think it changes things as much as it should. This was I think a deal that maybe they were hoping to get a little bit more out of from the FanDuel Sports Network, and didn't really show up that way. And just kind of a note for fans too: you should be able to watch this without cable. You might have to pay. I've heard upwards of $200 a year to watch the Reds games. So it's not totally user friendly in that regard, but you should be able to watch it even while you're in market. That was one of the parts of the deal. So I'll see if I think this could mean more for the future. If people buy that, and it seems like the Reds are picking up viewers and they're more valuable to the FanDuel Sports Network, maybe they get more money for producing their games, and in the future they can use it. But for this year, I don't think it's going to change anything because 10 extra million where Nick Krall saying, I don't know, we'll have to see. It kind of seems like the ho-hum type of thing where it's not really going to help them go get that free agent bat that we're really hoping for.
Well, either that or I mean they've got that money. I think they've got to decide whether or not they want it for now or at the trade deadline as well. Because I think if this team is in contention, I think he'll try to go find something. There are still options left. I'm going to list them really quickly, Joe, and then we'll dive into what we think they maybe should do, and then we'll give our offseason grades and we'll sign off here. You still have people like your favorite, JD Martinez, who is absolutely available. For how much money, though, I don't know, but I think they could probably get him for like $10 million or less, honestly, at this point. We'll have to see. Other options here, Ramon Laureano, who has not been great, but has, a solid right-handed bat. Had some time in Cleveland, but not with Terry, as far as I know. Randall Grichuk can still hit lefties really well, actually, and would be a good platoon guy. I think they may end up looking at somebody like him. You still have Michael A. Taylor. I don't think they're going back to the Harrison Bader experiment. I would be really surprised by that. Kike Hernandez and Manuel Margot as well are interesting options for them that are still of the available type. Let me get a couple more here. They could reunite with Adam Duvall. He can still hit lefties pretty decently and for some power. I think fans would be pretty excited to have him back. I doubt they're going to want Tommy Pham, but Tommy Pham can still hit lefties pretty decently. He's just kind of a locker room cancer, and I don't know if Terry's going to want to deal with him. And then Jurickson Profar, I think, is the next best available outfield guy who I think he's waiting for a payday that he might not get and may have to take another one-year deal to kind of figure it out. But of those guys, I would say personally the ones that I am most interested in are Jurickson Profar, JD Martinez, and Randall Grichuk. I would say that those are the ones who I think they could go after and probably not have to break the bank on, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. But Joe, where are you at with these guys yourself?
I have the same favorites as you do. I think if we're going to say we have a budget, JD Martinez is the move. He probably signs for less, and he probably signs for a shorter-term deal.
Yep.
Rob, one thing I'm going to say, though, this team should be shooting for the stars. I hate that we're sitting here and not getting someone. So there's a guy you didn't list that is available right now, and he turned down a huge offer by the Blue Jays, Anthony Santander.
I know.
Dude is 30 years old. He hit 44 home runs, 235 batting average. Not the greatest contact hitter, but we were a team that we're looking for that right-handed bat. We're looking for an outfield. And yes, he does hit both ways, but he can hit very well from the right-handed side of the plate. Silver Slugger, one-time All-Star. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of money, but when you take into account that we don't have some of our young guys signed, either sign our young guys and say, hey, we are spending money on that way, or go and get someone like this who is a certifiable star. He wants 5 years. I'm not sure he's going to get 5 years from any team this year, but if you can sign this guy to he said he's willing to consider a short-term deal if it's high average annual value. Would 20 extra million this year, 25, I don't even know what it would end up being, to be honest. I don't know what the market value is for him because it does seem like it's very up in the air that last year was his best year at the age of 30, and it was so good for him. But would that 1 year hurt your future plans to sign all these young stars? No. So yes, it would suck for the balance books for this year. Yes, it would probably put you close to something you don't want to do in terms of the budget. But if you want to win, this is the guy you got to go sign. But if you want to do budget, I think the guys you mentioned, and specifically JD Martinez, my guy, who just hits the ball, can play DH for us, is the guy. But that's the guy I've been thinking about all offseason of if I am running this team on MLB The Show, that is the guy I want to put in this lineup for so many reasons. So, again, 44 home runs last year. Can you imagine, Rob, even if he wasn't hitting for as big of an average as we would have hoped, right? 44 home runs in this lineup. Can you imagine what he would do in Great American Ballpark? Holy crap, dude. So that is my shoot for the moon. This guy would be really good, veteran player, has experience. Him and Gavin Lux together bring in some veteran experience from teams who have kind of gone on and won some big games. That'd be huge. So, again, that's my pipe dream. I hate to spend too much time on a pipe dream. That's never going to happen, but I like to shoot for the stars, and unfortunately, it just won't happen.
Well, and can you imagine a lineup with 3 switch hitters in it? I mean, that's wild. I don't remember the last time that I'd seen that. And I think, here's what I think. If they could find a way to ship off Jamer and give away half his salary, I think the Reds would be able to go out and get Santander. I just think that they are that meme of we have Anthony Santander at home, Jamer Candelario, right? That's really what this kind of is right now. And, I think they are anticipating a bounce back season from Jamer. So I I don't know. We'll have to see. I didn't list him because I just didn't think he was realistic, but I would love for that to be the case. I think he would be outstanding on this team. And I think if you're not going to get him, then yeah, they need to go out. Like, if JD Martinez bats DH every single game, like, who cares? The guy can still hit. He has such incredible stats for somebody who I don't know that I ever thought he was going to be this good, right? He still hit 235 last year, 16 home runs. Like, you could get him on the cheap. That's his worst year. He was an All-Star 3 straight seasons before last year. I think he still has a little bit left in him. Again, David Justice, seriously, this is actually kind of the David Justice comparison right here. 37 years old. You got a little bit of baseball magic left in. This guy could hit 20-plus home runs very easily in Great American Ballpark. And we have actually, I think I saw statistically, been the worst DHing team in baseball since the DH, arrived. So we could use a guy who's a professional DH. Sorry. He still can hit for power. He's going to strike out not a ton. For a power hitter, he really does not strike out a lot. I would love him too. So we'll see. I've really been... you have shown me the light on JD Martinez for sure. And we'll have to see if he's the guy. But they got to get somebody. I think they're going to end up... I really think they're going to end up getting a Randall Grichuk. I could totally see that being the case. And I'd be fine. I don't think he's going to be a bad player whatsoever. It's going to really, really come down to Terry being an outstanding manager, though, for them to do this. Because he's going to have to puzzle piece basically every single game. It's not going to be straightforward outside of you start Ellie, Matt McClain, and TJ Friedel, right? Like, outside of that, it's going to be puzzle piece throughout the rest of the lineup every single night. And, yeah. The last thing we'll talk about very quickly, Carlos Estevez. The Reds are apparently interested in him. So we will have to see kind of what that looks like. But he's been pretty solid in Philadelphia last year after getting traded over. He had a 2.5 ERA with the Angels, 2.3. He was an all-star in 2023. He's a guy who can very much go and save games. I think that this would be a smart move for the Reds in terms of if they are not confident that Alexis Diaz is going to be able to get it done. He's got some good stuff. He's got some playoff experience. He's been really, really good basically since 2021, at least in terms of relievers. He doesn't give up a lot of home runs as well. That is something that should be noted. Only gave up 5 home runs all of last season. So I personally would really like this move. If they have a little bit of extra cash, they're not going to throw it at an outfielder. Go out and get a decent reliever. I think this could be a really, really smart find for the Reds.
Yeah, I'm on board with it. I would love to have him. He's a very good pitcher. You mentioned that he doesn't give up a lot of home runs. He only gave up, his last year in Colorado was 2022. He only gave up 7 home runs
which is wild.
In Colorado, which is pretty awesome. And he's a guy who I think can help us out in a lot of different ways, but also it's kind of like a changing sliding doors moment. We saw Jeff Hoffman go from the Phillies to the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays were kind of in the market for him, so that puts us in a really good spot. If we want him and have the money to actually give a fair offer, we could actually kind of get him. So that would really help the bullpen and help an area that still, again, we're trying to be realistic. I know I went on this Santander little minute there, but this is a guy who could realistically be added and help our team because we realistically still have some needs outside of just that right-handed outfield bat.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that the bullpen is well being overlooked, even though it's a solid bullpen. And I think with better starting pitching and a little bit better offense, I think this bullpen won't be taxed as much and could be very good this year. We're going to finish this off here. Final part here, Joe. Offseason grades so far. I think there's still some moves to be made for the Reds. How many, I don't know. But I think at least 1, maybe 2. If for some reason we're really lucky, 3. What is your grade so far for this offseason? I have mine personally. I would love to get where yours is going to be because I have a feeling that it's going to be lower than mine.
Yeah, I'm at like a C+. I love the moves they've done, but you have this team and you're putting so much pressure on Terry Francona to make these guys better than they were last year, which is not a high bar to be honest, but to get the most out of this team, he's gonna have to work with these young guys a lot, which I think he can do. But it's not like the Reds front office, other than getting Terry Francona in the first place. If we want to throw him in there, then it's a B plus, right? That's awesome. The coaching staff is a B plus. But if it's just the free agents and the moves we've made, it's a C plus.
I am counting coaching
Gavin
staff
Lux
in
is
mind,
great.
just so you know.
All right, well then B plus for me then. We'll say B plus. It is a good job to get that coaching staff in place. I really like what they can do. I don't think they have the tools to really go and be a very competitive, like we want them to go be a playoff threat. They could be a team that could maybe be in the race for the playoffs. They could maybe make the playoffs, but a team that could actually win in the playoffs. It is going to take exponential jumps from young players. Some of them we haven't really seen. Matt McClain obviously didn't play a lot of last year, so we have put a lot of pressure on that staff. Now, is it still good that they got Gavin Lux and all they gave up was Jonathan India? Yes. Brady Singer, should that add to our pitching staff? Yes. But there are still massive holes on this team, and while the MLB free agent offseason goes pretty slow in comparison to other sports, it's getting to that time where we're a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and they need to make a move. So you want to include the coaching staff, B plus offseason. I'm pretty content with the coaching staff coming in, and I like the players we've gotten, but there was a lot more to fix with this team. And it's going to be up to Terry Francona to do it now rather than having the front office really aid him in a lot of big ways. So we'll see what happens, but that's kind of how I see things.
I'm giving it a B, actually. I was sitting at B the entire time. I almost went down to B minus. I still think that they may have overpaid Nick Martinez for the role that he's going to end up having. I can't believe they can't figure out a way to get rid of Jeimer Candelario off the books, this man is one of the longest tenured Reds in terms of contract. Like, he's going to be here for a while. I feel like, maybe they're waiting for his value to go up, but at that point, then he's going to be playing well. I feel like they should. There are a lot of people in the market this year, I feel like, that would have been willing to take him on with some other stuff. Maybe we do have to give up a prospect. But, like, if that turns into an Anthony Santander, then fine. Like, I'm confused because I think that they have made good additions. That's why I'm giving them a B. For me, like, C is like direct middle, the best they could have, that is just an average, right? I think they are better than average. I think getting Lux was really good. I think Trevino is a sneaky good pickup, right? I think, obviously getting Terry Francona, like, he's going to get the most out of these guys. He was our number one pick for a manager, right? And I think that you're going to see guys have big roles. I think Santiago Espinal is going to have a big role. I think Stuart Fairchild is going to have a big role, right? I think Will Benson will bounce back a little bit. I don't know how much, but it's got to be, anything can be better than last season. I do think these guys will take steps. It's just, there's so much confusion right now as to where everybody's going to go, how they're going to get played. I mean, we're still paying Emilio Pagan $8 million a year. He's the fourth biggest freaking part of this payroll right now. And I can't really stomach that at the moment, to be honest with you. The fact that man's making more than Hunter Green is gross negligence at best, in my opinion. Krall has complete duds like that one, but then he goes out and Nick Martinez probably was worth $14 million last year to this Reds team. I don't know if he's $21 million worth, but they clearly really wanted him. They knew they had the payroll flexibility. It's just that, like, if you're going to tell me that Nick Martinez right now is worth a Santander or a really good free agent hitter for 1 year at that exact same price, I just don't know if I am convinced on that. And it's not me saying that that's a bad pickup. He could be really good again this year. If that man pitches to like a 2.3 ERA again or whatever it was, then you guys can come and just, I don't know, beat me up or something. I don't know. I'd prefer not, but
Wow.
yeah, I mean, like verbally, preferably, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I don't really know. And then, like, now there are rumors that a lot of baseball is going towards a 6-man rotation, which I actually think would be really good for this Reds team. But then you're not getting Hunter Green out there every, 5 days, and that could be a problem for me. And then, like, what was the point of trading for Brady Singer? Because you're trying to get him to eat innings. Like, there are just a lot, like, they have value, right? Like, there is no doubt in my mind that this team got better this offseason. That's why they are getting a B. Maybe even a B plus if I'm feeling really generous. But I don't know what is happening. The last time the Reds did a rebuild, everybody's contract was, like, kind of lined up, right? So that you knew that, like, hey, this is our window by this time. the Reds are still very open-ended as to when their window is going to be. And, like, are you only going to really have Gavin Lux here for 2 years and then be gone? Like, what is that going to look like? Is Singer only here for 2 years and then going to be gone? Jake Fraley is still here till 2027. Santiago Espinal is still here till 2027. Like, there's just a lot of question marks that I have with what is going to happen. How is this team going to piece together? And maybe it's just that smarter people like Terry Francona are going to know what to do, and they're going to be the ones to figure it out. And that's why I'm not an MLB manager, even though that was my dream job growing up. But, like, it's just, there are just a lot of questions. And I'm okay with having value. It's better to have a lot of value at places like starting pitcher, you know, and even in your infield, because most of the time your infielders can move to the outfield. It's not very often that you see a Mookie Betts where he can kind of come back in after being in the outfield for so long and be an infielder again. Like, that's just really tough to make that transition. So I like the idea behind it, but how it's going to come together, I'm still very unclear.
Yeah, so I will give everyone the chance to be optimistic here. And that is not something I usually do. I'm usually the guy who's like, sometimes they stink. But let's put it this way. Last year we had a big problem with the coaching staff, right? And I think, Rob, your contention was that a lot of the coaching staff made some of our players worse, right? Like they were told to do stupid things. And I agree, right? I don't think the coaching staff was good. If you think the way Rob thinks last year, which is like the coaching staff was not doing anything to add to them and they were making the players worse, and that's like something you're really passionate about, this year should be objectively better, exponentially better, and the players should all be better. If you're like me and think that, like, hey, maybe this signals that some of the guys are not as good as we thought, right? Maybe some of them are overhyped. And yeah, this may not change much, and the front office is failing the team because they needed to go out and get more bats. So you can look at it in two different ways. I think there's probably a middle ground in between the two of like, yeah, they had bad years. They can be better than that. The coaching staff can get more out of them, and they can make a more comfortable environment and be more player managers and player coaches and still get them more out of them because they're going to be accountable this year. So I do think that there is a raised level of play this year from some of the guys they already had, and they brought most of the guys that you want back. And like even guys like Jamer, who didn't have the greatest season last year, maybe he can play better and provide a lot of value for this team because for the most part, his career, he was doing that before, besides last year. So there is optimism where you can say like, hey, these guys stunk last year. They could do a lot better with just a little bit of change. But that still doesn't, for me, that's more of like a, hey, this is Terry Francona and your belief that coaching matters that much at the MLB level. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Like we have all the decisions being made by analytics and everything else. We'll see how Terry handles that. And I do think Terry's one of my top guys. I wanted to be the manager when we had that show, and I kind of mentioned him. But there is some room for optimism because of that. Now, that does not put the front office off the hook because they have money to spend and they have holes that they know they need to fix, and they should be fixing it. So, in a way, it's like, hey, managing this year I think is going to be very good. I think it's going to be one of the best in the league. The coaching staff I think is one of the best in the league. The roster talent I think is still up in the air because we just don't know what last year was. Was it 1 year off? Was it like everyone just had a bad year? Was it some of these guys are actually declining? Is it some of these guys who are prospects not going to be good? That's going to be interesting to find out this year. But it's still important to hold the front office accountable, which I like what you said with that, Rob. But there is reason for optimism if, like I said last year, that you believed that like the coaching staff was kind of like not helping them. Terry Francona will help them. He will hold them accountable and make them better players. So what will that be? How much can they get better? How much is that going to help the team? I have no idea. I think it can make him a playoff contender in terms of, or making the playoffs contender. I don't think it can make him a contender in the playoffs, which is kind of what we want to do. So that's it. It's kind of like a fine line here of like, they got better to that extent. If they want to actually be a team that you're like, oh, they can win in October. They can actually go the distance and do this thing. They have a lot of work to do. So I'm with you on most of what you said there, but those are kind of the reasons why.
No, I completely agree, and there is reason for optimism, fans. There is. This Reds team did get better. I don't care what anybody says, and I know Joe's agreeing with me on this one. The Reds are a better team, at least on paper, in 2025 than they were in 2024. But if they can go out and make a big signing, just one, if they go out and make two big signings, it'll be an A-plus offseason for me. I will just tell you straight up. And I'm not talking about just random signings. I'm talking like they go out and get Grichuk and JD Martinez, or they go out and get Santander, right, as just as one free agent signing. If they get Estevez and Grichuk and Martinez, then I'm really pumped. I'm like, okay, they are making good strides. So Still moves to be made. I think this Gavin Lux trade shows to me at least that I will be honest with you. I'm really proud of Nick Kroll for pulling that one off. I don't think a lot of teams are thinking with their picks the way the Reds are in that regard. I think that's a really, really, really smart move to make. I don't care if Mike Sirota ends up being like an absolute stud. I think for what they traded for and what they're getting, at least at current value standards wise, I think ultimately Sirota, the pick, and India are not going to add up to what Singer and Lux are going to end up being for this team. I really feel strongly about that one. I have really enjoyed the Singer, like the trades that Kroll is making. I think are smart. I think they are very intelligent. I would love to see what this man could do with a much bigger budget right now. He would still have some duds, like potentially Jamer and potentially Pagan, but he may be able to find those Martinez's, those Luxes, and those Singers. Like I am totally fine with that. Even his Espinal trade, that paid off dividends big time for what they gave up last year. So I feel like there's a good path, but I want to see a little bit more. And we've got time. Pitchers and catchers will be reporting here in a couple weeks. We will be making sure to keep you guys updated on that and all other Reds news. Joe, do you have any final words? Any wise words before we sign off for today?
I'll just my fun fact. Former Red from last year, Bubba Thompson, is now going to try to play college football. He's going to play for South Alabama. He was a former, I believe, high school quarterback, and he's from Alabama. And it didn't say he was retiring from baseball, so maybe he's just, I don't know, maybe he still has like that door open, but obviously didn't work out with the Reds. But if you are a Reds fan who also likes college football like me, and you want a rooting interest outside of, if you cheer for Cincinnati or Ohio State or Notre Dame, watch out
Miami
for USA, South Alabama. No one cheers for them, so. But go ahead, yeah. The Bubba Thompson in college football be a good time.
Some people cheer for Miami. Some people do. They won their bowl game. Cool. Yeah. We'll sign off from there. So appreciate you guys watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.